back to another episode of the CAPU Search podcast, Beyond the Device. Um, Anyone that listened to our first episode will know that we've created this podcast to delve into the lives, backgrounds, childhoods and futures of our guests, and we felt that it was important to put us both in the hot seat before we invited anyone on. So I'm pleased to introduce my co-partner, co-host, Nathan Puxty, to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll follow the same structure as we did when you interviewed me. I think we want to set out why we're bringing guests on, the reasons behind their success, and we know that's never straightforward, and a lot of the lessons are in the harder times, and some of that is perhaps in people's youth or early career. So let's go back to the start. So if you can just give us a brief introduction, where did your story begin? Tell us about your early years.
So I'm one of 5 siblings. So we've got 4 of us, same mum, same dad, and then my older sister has a different mum. But the 4 of us, we lived and grew up in Milton Keynes. My parents split at a young age. I think I was around sort of 6. And I suppose whilst I can remember a lot earlier years, I have no recollection of them being together. But I can remember, say, being 2 or 3 years old. So I don't remember a kind of family unit. I've always known it to be sort of split up. They probably didn't split in the best way. It was quite toxic between them. It wasn't, if I was to envisage co-parenting and how it should be done, this probably wasn't the way. They both met previously at Alcoholics Anonymous. So my dad and mum both recovering alcoholics. Shortly after the split, my mum started drinking again, and it was a period where she'd drink. We'd have to go live with my nan, then we're back with my mum. There's a lot of upheaval, but during that time, my dad didn't actually know what was going on. We were kind of told to not say anything. So yeah, a lot of upheaval as a young kid, but it actually gave me a lot of focus in school, football. I did dancing. I did a lot of dancing. I competed, and it was almost like forget what's going on around me, and I just sort of drilled down on the things that I like doing. And in terms of sort of being at home, I was now seen as the kind of man of the house, the dad of the house. I was always referred to as, the good boy, the kid that's doing all the chores, helping out. I essentially kind of grew up a lot faster than I probably should have done, and became very, very self-sufficient. So for anyone that's sort of grown up around addiction, whether that be alcohol or what have you, as a kid, you can't really rely on your parents at that point. So the only person you can really rely on is yourself. So yeah, from a very young age, self-sufficient, and yeah, grew up a lot faster than I probably should have done.
And do you think you were aware of that at the time, or did you just go into survival mode and only on reflection, looking back, you can see that's how it was?
I thought it was normal. I thought it was like, so I've got a Weimaraner dog now. If anyone that knows, they're a massive breed. I also had one when I was younger, and I was 6. I was walking my Weimaraner at 6 years old, which is mental. That makes no sense. As a 6-year-old, should not be doing that.
If it was
But at the time,
like
it was
Willow.
yeah. Just like it's just not. You would never let that happen now. And yeah, it's not until I've had a kid myself, and you almost you see yourself through your child, and you're like that. Like you'd be distraught if that was your kid, if all these things were happening. But at the time, as a kid, you're so resilient, you have no idea. And I've come to find out that these things have a knock-on effect later on in life. But at the time, you don't know. You know no different. Your parents are your parents. That's normal to you, and you're not one to. At that age, you're not questioning your friends. What's your family like? It's just what you know, isn't it? Within your 4 walls, that's what you know.
Yeah. So staying with your childhood, because this is obviously such an important time for you, around what you wanted to do when you were older. It was just head down working hard at school, but did you have any role models or influences at that young age outside of the family home, maybe?
Um, Outside of the family home, no. Uh, my mum, where my mum kind of praised me a lot, which sort of come from taking on the responsibility of being a dad, or being the man in the house, doing all the chores, doing all these sort of things. It got me praise, and I liked it.
Hmm.
Any kid would want the praise from the mum. So it was almost like my aspirations were always to do the things that made her give me praise. So, working hard in school, doing well in dancing, doing well in football, whatever it may be, you know, that was the only thing I was really looking for from her. But outside of that, I wouldn't. No, there's nothing that would stand out at that point.
Okay. So that praise at an early age, because I've worked with you for over 10 years now, and you can see that in the job that we do, praise from your colleagues, praise from your managers, it's a job where the more you put in, the more you get out. And the jobs that you did before this, when you started to get into your working career, that early influence of praise from your mum, is that what drove you in work?
No, which is quite strange. Um, it's it's almost like a need to avoid failure. I would never say that I was striving to do X, Y, and Z. It was like I don't want to let my mum down. I don't want I don't want to lose that thing. So it became like an internal drive for me that was just, yeah, I can't fail at this. And by having that mentality, you end up doing pretty well because that fear driving you rather than, yeah, like a positive feeling, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
uh,
Yeah.
people talk about it all the time, don't they? In any kind of sales role, it's a fear of failure or a motivation by success. And I think that comes from what experiences you've been through as a child or in early career. So did you always envision yourself going into this sort of field, into a like customer facing type job?
Definitely not. I think, again, going back to the kind of praise thing, you know, my mum, you've got your parents that see careers such as law or medicine. They're like the gold standard things you should be doing. So I always like verbally out loud said these were the things that I wanted to do. Whether I actually wanted to do them, probably not. My auntie had a law firm, and that was like that's an obvious route there. Do really well in law, take it over. I ended up going to Warwick University to study law. I have no idea how I blagged myself in there. I had to do a little entry exam. Had to tell them how much I wanted it, and within 1 week I was back at home. Like, this was the worst decision of my life. Took a gap year. I was working part time at O2, the phone shop. Carried
Hmm.
that on full time, and that was my like real first insight into, hold on, the harder I work, I earn commission on the sales that I do. I can cross sell products, earn more commission, and it was like, hold on, this is a bit of me. The harder I work, the more I get rewarded, and that's when it kind of started. And yeah, that then I think eventually led me into recruitment. Had a discussion with a friend that was in it, and he just said, look, this is exactly what you do already, but you get more rewards for it, and that's
Mm,
kind of where it started, on that
okay.
point.
I think a lot of people fall into sales roles. It's the exposure to early jobs and introductions, the just people you're surrounding yourself by, and it's obviously worked out. And I'm sure we'll go into that in a bit more detail. But whether this is from your childhood or another stage, but what would you say is that one defining moment in your life that changed everything for you?
Well, so the moment I haven't discussed is with my mum. She sadly lost her battle with alcoholism when I was 16, and that would seem like the obvious point at which things changed, but it actually happened years and years and years before that. It was the taking responsibility at such a young age, being the man growing up so quickly, dealing with an alcoholic parent where, whilst their intentions, like, they're doing the best they can possibly can, like, you have to rely on yourself. So that was it. I'd say from 6 years old onwards, I've always had to make decisions very quickly, and in my adult life where a big decision needs to be made on something, and I think, Dunks, you've seen this from me, it takes me a split second to make a decision on something because it doesn't feel big,
Mm,
because I've probably dealt with things when I was younger.
yeah.
So most normal people have to assess the situation, what's the positives, negatives, risks, and I just do it like that. And I think, yeah, that's then helped. It's hindered me, but obviously helped me a lot as I've got older. So yeah, I'd say that it's been, it's basically growing up too quickly is the kind
And
of turning point for me.
and so that happened, well, from your memory, around 6 years old onwards. So
Mm,
from that, there was then a 10-year period living in that environment with your mum,
yeah.
until she lost her battle. So at 16 then, because I remember you've said this to me before, you were doing your exams within a week. Did you have a dance class? Or was it a
So
dance exam?
yeah, I had, so I remember going to my dance teacher and said, "Oh, would you mind moving my dance exam to the morning instead of the afternoon on that particular day?" And they were like, "Oh, well, why is that?" I was like, "Oh, I can't be there in the afternoon." She said, "Oh, we can't really move it." And I was like, "Oh, I've actually got my mum's funeral." I said, "I've got a funeral I need to go to." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, it's fine. It's my mum's funeral." And the teacher cried,
Mm,
and I was kind of like, there wasn't really any emotion there. And then I did, and she said, "No, no, you don't need to do your exam." I said, "No, no, I want to do my exam. Like, can I just do it in the morning?" So I did the exam on the day of the funeral. The funeral was upsetting, but then literally from that point onwards, it was as though nothing had happened to me. And I used to say to friends, "Oh no, I'm unaffected. I'm fine. Literally, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm absolutely fine." And what I've now learned years and years on is a massive avoidant, and I will channel myself into recruitment, setting up a recruitment company, property. I always have something that I'm doing that gets me excited, and I've just been avoiding it for a long, 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 long time. So yeah, it came out later on in life, and yeah. But if you'd asked me at that point, you wouldn't have a clue. You wouldn't know.
mm. And I think getting to know you and how you've actually started to deal with this in more recent years, and probably since becoming a dad yourself, you're bringing up those emotions in a different way once you've had another 15, 20 years of life and success, and dealing with it in ways that you probably weren't aware of.
Mm,
But in the time that we've known each other, and knowing what's happened in your childhood, it's almost like I can look at you and think you've got an addictive personality, but you've channeled it into the right things.
mm,
If you get an idea, you will become the best at that thing. You want to be a DJ, you're going to be a DJ. Property recruitment, and it's just it's within you to get hyper focused on something, and excited about it. And it's almost like now you're dealing with the emotions and feelings around it, because probably you want to be a better dad through
yeah.
your own experiences, better partner. So the emotions there, perhaps you didn't feel them, but now you've started to deal with that in later life. What sort of feelings have you felt?
It's quite funny. So I've got a therapist that I've been going to the last 6, 7 weeks, and she'll ask me, "Okay, so how does that make you feel?" And I start talking, and she's like, "No, that's you thinking. How do you feel?" And I'll be like, um, and then I start talking again. She's like, "No, that's you thinking again." And it's like I didn't realize how bad I was at almost putting a name to how I felt. Um, so how do I feel? Where I've always seen things in a kind of positive light. I've always viewed my mum positively. I've always got, I've viewed my dad's positively, and kind of any behaviour that happened to us as kids, it was like, oh yeah, but I've got an explanation for it. And actually now I can go, yeah, that was shit. That wasn't great, and not blaming people, but it's like, okay, it wasn't that rosy. And I remember with Gina, I'd sort of tell stories to her, and she's just shocked. She's like,
Mm.
"You've never said that before, and you say it so normal." And then yeah, it's sort of actually delving into how I feel, and like there's sadness with certain things. There's resentment for certain things, and it definitely comes up in like I now notice my trigger points.
What
So
are
things that yeah, with Gina, with all sorts of things where she'll say something a certain way, I get triggered, and I have no idea why I've got triggered, and now I can pinpoint why that's happened. And yeah, so talking to someone has really, really, really helped me here. And I've not gone to her in a state of needing help. It's more, I just want to be better. And you kind of alluded to it with being a dad for Oscar. It's like, I want to get this as right as I possibly can. It will never go perfect, but it's how do you be the kind of dad that, or the parent that perhaps you didn't get?
they? Yes, it's quite exposing, isn't it, when you start to really understand how you feel about your parents and people that you are close to that you've put on a pedestal, because some of that you start to put blame at their door as well, and
Mm,
and that maybe feels quite uncomfortable to start with, but it's a natural feeling to have. Um, and again, it's just with the intention of just wanting to be better yourself.
yeah.
So, for our listeners, the people that are in our CAPU community, our work network, now that you're having to deal with these things whilst balancing a professional career, running a business, you've relocated to Dubai, you've got a 2-year-old, there's a lot going on there, you're juggling a lot. So, are you splitting things off? Like, how are you managing just working with all of this?
So the the move to Dubai was intentional to improve our lifestyle. And when I say lifestyle, a lot of that comes down to the time that we have available. So Dubai is 4 hours ahead or 3 hours ahead, depending on the time of the year. And what it's given me is that kind of space in the morning before work starts to get really the most important things in check. It's um, you know making sure you're spending more time with your son. There's more time for me and Gina to to do things because as with any new parent will tell you, you almost become invisible to each other for the first year
Yeah.
or two, and you kind of forget the reasons why you were there in the first place. We didn't have any family living close by, so it wasn't like we had people on hand to help. So moving here has really helped give us that time again and really enjoy each other's company. And then actually, it makes me even more laser focused on the work that I do because I'm compressing say a 9 hour day into 6 hours, and you just feel like not a minute's getting wasted here. It's like the moment the UK's up, I'm on the phone, I'm doing my work, and then when it comes to getting Oscar from nursery, I won't talk. Like it's a non-negotiable. I'm not talking to people in work because I've done my dedicated time, and like for me, Oscar's the most important thing, and I don't ever want to be that person that's rewind to the avoidant Nathan that's focusing on these tasks to avoid how he feels. It's like, well, no, like being with your family is the most important thing, and obviously being around a kid that expresses everything. It really does help,
Mm.
and yeah, so just having dedicated time in the day for work and fitting in the other stuff, which arguably is more important because when it gets to the end of your time, it's probably not going to be the work thing that we're going to be talking about, is it?
No, and
No.
I think from our perspective, the freedom that we've created for ourselves has come through hard work. Like we've had
Mm.
to earn that um, through employment and being confident to do our own thing. But was it was it intentional for you? Like, was there ever a point growing up where you thought, I want to work for myself, I want to do my own thing? Was it just circumstance out of the success that you had in recruitment? Like, how have you ended up where you are?
So I, well, I have an uncle, not one that I really talked to, but from a young age, he never had a job. And
Mm,
I remember mum saying, "Oh, he's an entrepreneur." And honestly did not know what that word meant at that age. I used to say it like I did, but I didn't have a clue what it even meant. I probably didn't really know until about 5, 6 years ago what that actually meant. And I was thinking, well, so he's really well off, but I don't know what, like, I don't think what he done was legit, to be honest. But still, he was
okay.
working for himself, and uh, yeah, it sort of showed me that you don't need to be within the kind of employment structure, and and obviously getting sorry, then setting up CAPU. I didn't realize that would probably be the number one benefit of doing it. We obviously knew the financial rewards of doing it because we earn the money. It doesn't go to house to the company. But it was the freedom, it was the ability to make decisions, to do these things for yourself. And it was so obvious way before we did it, because how many contractors have we helped make the transition from a permanent role into a contracting world, and they never ever say, I really miss being employed. So it was like,
Mm.
how many times have we heard that story? It's
Just taking
crazy how
our
many
own
times we've had.
advice.
Yeah, it was, and then
Yeah.
it was that light bulb moment, like we need to take our own advice. But yeah, for CAPU, well, it could have been called anything at that point. It was COVID, the whole market crashed. I remember me and you were sort of texting. Obviously, you were at a different company at that point, and I was like, "Yeah, another 10 contract terminations today." And it was just a joke, wasn't it? How quickly our contract books were going, and there's no budget. There's a lot of panic. So we almost went back to zero. COVID happened. We had 3 months of nothing really going on, and then we both grafted at our at previous companies, got our contract book up to a certain level again, and we were like, we've just proven again that we know what we're doing.
Mm.
And obviously, yeah, I sent you a text saying let's meet. We met with notepads, pens, didn't use them, of course, and then that was the kind of the start of it. But yeah, it was like a sliding doors moment. It was like, this is the perfect opportunity to do this. And from what we've known, sort of the post-COVID bounce, we couldn't have timed it more perfect, really, and
And
how it went. So
um, so with COVID, because I guess that was like an external impact on both of our careers at that point that almost ignited that conversation again because we'd thought about it before, hadn't we?
mm,
So take COVID out of it. Do you think this would have happened? Do you think it was
I think
inevitable?
so. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Obviously, we had spoken about it a few years before. Um, at that time, it wasn't quite right, but yeah, I think I'd sort of quietly said to Gina, I won't be working for someone when I'm 30.
Mm.
And I suppose the main driver behind that was I didn't want to be employed when I had a kid. I never ever wanted any decision that could impact my kid, whoever that may be, to be influenced by someone else other than me, Gina. I just didn't want that.
Yeah.
And CAPU enabled that. So if I don't want to work, I don't have to work. I'm gonna, I haven't got to ask for time off.
Hmm.
We're adults. We don't need to do that. Um, and yeah, just having a life that's completely on my terms is what I wanted.
And we know we're so fortunate to have that. I'm
Yeah.
very conscious of explaining what we do to people, and I'm proud that we've earned that. But it's obviously not an option for a lot of people in a lot of industries and a lot of roles. So, what advice would you give? Because I think there's something that you talk about quite a lot that you can't just go and tell everyone to go and start their own business. It's just not right for some people based on what they do, their position, their family situation, lots of reasons why they can't. But what they can do is work out what their non-negotiables are, because that's what's important to them and how they balance things, whether they're employed, whether they're not. So just talk us through what you mean by those non-negotiables.
So I think you can have a kind of wish list of how your life plays out, and it doesn't have to be career, it could be personal, it could be whatever it may be. But in reality, to get everything you want, it might not always be feasible due to external factors, things outside your control. So it's almost like, and I say this to people when they're looking for their job, like, what's the one thing that you cannot not be without? So for me, it's there's not a work call, there's nothing recreational, there's nothing that will get in the way of me spending time with Oscar. Like there is literally nothing. So that's the thing I'm a non-negotiable on. I'll always make sure I'm there for him, and when I am with him, actually being fully present for him. So that's it. So all the other stuff I can negotiate on,
Hmm.
but that's the kind of one thing that I won't. if I was to sit here and say I'm non-negotiable on my work, I'm non-negotiable on um, the gym, I'm non-negotiable, I have to watch every single Liverpool game, and I'm non-negotiable on spending loads of quality time with Gina, and I'm non-negotiable on Oscar, it's like you're setting yourself up to fail there.
Mm,
So it's about figuring out what your non-negotiable is, and then try and make decisions sort of around that.
okay. It's
Yeah,
almost trying to simplify your life and order it in terms of priorities, and they can sometimes change. But if it's something as big as spending time with your children, that doesn't change, and then that starts to shape who you are as a person, and all of your decisions come from that. It's just core values, isn't it?
yeah. It's almost
Um,
like what thing, if it didn't happen, would cause you the most regret? And I'm like, I'm not really someone that has regrets because I generally do the things that I think I want to do. If I don't do something, I've squared it off in my brain the reason why I don't want to do it, and I've accepted that decision. But if I got, if Oscar became 18 years old and he has issues with me based on how I was, I'd find that very, very hard to deal with.
mm,
And that's how you know that's a non-negotiable. Whereas if someone said in 18 years' time, you're going to earn half as much money as you could have done, I'd be like, so it's fine. That's cool. I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with my kids having going to therapy because of how I was.
yeah, yeah, and you will parent Oscar and potentially other future children in a way that you
Maybe.
think is right based on your own experiences, but you're also raising Oscar in a very different environment to the one that you had,
Yeah.
the life in Dubai. So um, you've turned out all right. You're having to deal with things now in a certain way, and you're doing that. So how do you keep Oscar grounded in the environment that he's grown up with? Because ultimately he could have anything he wants. He lives in a very nice place in Dubai. I mean, it's like in this safety bubble, which children should have at that age. But you're parenting a child in a very different environment to the one that you grew up in.
I wish I knew the answer to that question. That's the one thing is I sort of talk to Gina about it all the time. Like, how do we make sure that he doesn't turn out like a lot of the kids we see around here?
Mm,
In Dubai, there's a culture where families will have nannies or maids, and instead of them looking after the house, they end up looking after their kid. And no, that's not something we'd ever do. But you could see how quickly the parents just let other people raise their kids. You see the way they kind of behave in parks with their nannies. It's not a good sight. I should put it that way. So we're very, very conscious that we won't go down that route. Um, Even simple things like every time he speaks or asks for something, it's like Oscar, please, thank you, and we're just
mm,
constantly on him. We make sure he's putting his stuff away. It's just those like little things just to kind of build his character, and sort of it can be a battle with a kid. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like always explaining decisions to him so that he understands. But you're right, it isn't reality in a place like this, and yeah, I'll probably be better to answer that in about 2 or 3 years' time. I'll tell you how we've done at that point.
yeah, we'll ask Oscar.
Yeah, ask Oscar. Yeah,
Um, so to bring this back to like from a work career perspective, because clearly from a very young age you've had to deal with things that you shouldn't have been exposed to, shouldn't have had to have dealt with at that age, and you've managed to see the positives through that, take control. It's almost like there was never a plan B or a safety net, something to fall back on. So it was all on you. And I've experienced that. We've talked about that. There's just this has to work because I've not got that inheritance or a family unit that are going to support if this goes wrong. And that drives you in a certain way. So, is there any sort of advice you would give to people either starting out in their career or those that feel like their life hasn't turned out the way that they wanted? Because a lot of this comes from actually just taking responsibility, and that can be a hard
yeah.
truth. But How would you advise people that are maybe going through some issues?
So I think, like, particularly as a kid, it's not your fault when things happen to you. All you know is the falls that you're brought up in. That's your reality. That's normal. There's no escaping because you're a kid. But what you are responsible for is how you act as an adult. Um, you'll be very, very lucky if you go through life and nothing happens to you, because that's life. Stuff will happen, and it will always be unexpected. But there's a kind of moment where, which is what I haven't done in at the time, is I didn't feel how I felt. I didn't deal with the emotions. I didn't do probably what I needed to do at that point, and then it will play out later in life. If you don't deal with it in the moment, it will 100% come out. So it's almost give yourself the time, the space that you need to deal with it. But once you feel like you've got a handle on that, you are then 100% responsible for your next decision, and that decision will ultimately shape what you do. And once you get through that real tough period, those decisions will likely lead to something positive if you take a positive step. But they can also go the other way. I've seen it with other family members. We all reacted differently to the situation. But it's like it's almost expect the unexpected without fearing it, but it will happen. Something will happen to you that will catch you off guard, and it's what you then do next is what's going to dictate kind of what happens for you.
So with all that in mind, would you change anything?
No, like simple. I've heard this on loads of podcasts where they sort of say, right, what's the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you? And they talk about it. Okay, would you go back and change it? And I don't know what the stat is, but it's in the 90s that 90% say no, and I completely get it. Like every life choice I've made has been based on how I was shaped as a kid, and like me and my brother joke about it, but we called it like our own little superpower. We're just like,
Mm.
well, this is a gift that we've been given, and we've got to use it, which we have. Um, the only thing I would change is that I've probably dealt with my emotions a lot sooner, because some to some people a normal interaction in a relationship can be quite difficult sometimes because of certain triggers and certain things. So yeah, the actual event and stuff that happened I wouldn't change. Um, but yeah, I think working on myself a lot earlier would definitely be one thing I'd recommend to anyone. You
Yeah,
can't like you can't go wrong learning about yourself.
yeah. And again, that's in some ways a bit of a luxury to do that professionally, because there is a cost that comes to that. And I think
Mm,
we've both seen the benefits off the back of that. Um, but even just talking to family, talking to friends, like having those vulnerable conversations, which is what we want this to be about. Hopefully, we'll have lots of guests come on this podcast and share their stories, and there'll be lessons within that. So just generally, just talking helps. With the conversations that we've had, we've probably become a lot closer because we know and we've got quite a few shared experiences. It just comes through talking. So looking ahead now with everything that you've achieved, mid 30s, parent, business owner, externally, a lot of people would say you've achieved a lot, but I know that you're highly motivated around a lot of things. So, what does the future hold for you personally and professionally?
Personally, I would say I just want to be the best dad I possibly can, and I want to be the best partner I possibly can. I just want my family to. You just want your family to just idolize is the wrong word, but you just want them to feel supported, heard. They just look at you and think like Oscar, wow, that's my dad.
Mm,
Like that feeling would be really nice. Potentially more kids. I don't know. We're not putting any pressure on it. We love how we've got it at the moment, and I've seen a lot of friends do the whole 2 under 2 thing, and it looks absolute chaos. So
Yeah.
we all swerve that for a while, and then kind of decide. From a business perspective, I think we're now. Well, I'm living in Dubai. You're traveling. It's a very different setup to what we're used to. So this year is let's nail this. Let's keep the business going as we would, and kind of prove to ourselves that it doesn't matter where we are. You
Hmm.
know, we can kind of make this happen. We want to grow the community. The market conditions have not been where we'd wanted them to be. So look forward to when that returns and we can, yeah, grow that community like we wanted to. We want to make our end of year awards bigger and better each year. Um, and we've obviously recently hired Kathy and starting to see some real positive things there. So we've kind of both said we wouldn't hire. We don't know. Like I'm never going to say that's not an option, but it's working well at the minute. So maybe in time we could free up more of our time and do do more things personally. There's lots of things on the table. I'm not one to look ahead too much. Even like the weekend, I never think about what I'm doing. I kind of just want to do what I'm doing today, feel good about what I've done today, and then I'll think about tomorrow. Um, so yeah, I'd be lying if I said I've got these big aspirations because if you sort of linking it back to what I said before, it's about that need to avoid failure. So I want to make sure today's not a failure, and then the rest of it will just kind of take care of itself.
So what excites you most about the medtech industry? Obviously, you just talked about the challenges it's faced over the last 18 months, but actually looking ahead to the industry and our part that we play in it, what excites you most about medtech?
I think like we are able to see hiring trends ahead of individual companies. And what we have seen a lot in the last 18 months, and even in our own use, is artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of these things. And whether we like it or not, it's going to change the way that everyone works. It's changed the way that we work. We've seen the skill sets that are in demand, and it kind of it allows us to educate people on what they need to do to almost future-proof themselves. And I get it all the time,
Hmm.
what's the best thing I could be doing right now? And I was like, you need to get involved in medical device software because that is the way that everything is going. All the new startups we speak to, it's almost you just assume it's a software. There's not actual device behind it. So I think it's the role that we can play in help educating people on what they need to do, um, connecting people to the right people, keep doing what we're doing, build the community, and who knows, our job can be completely changed in the next 2 or 3 years. I'm sure it will. Like with all the tools and stuff that we use, we might not be needed. Who knows?
Yeah. We think we're coming up to what, starting our fifth year? This will be the end of our fourth year
Yeah,
next month, which is crazy. And you think about the the little office that we started in and now where we're doing this conversation from, and that's been in a market that has really shifted, at least in the last 18 months, 2 years, with various challenges, and we've still ended up here. So where the next 3 or 4 years will take us, who knows? But it's exciting. So
it
if you were
is.
to summarise everything that we've talked about into one key lesson from your journey, one thing that you'd want to leave the listeners with, what would that be?
I think I've already said it, but it's going to be expect the unexpected. Stuff happens to you, it happens to everyone. Deal with the emotional side of what happens to you as soon as you possibly can, and then really think about your next step after that, because almost the next step is what's going to dictate what happens to you in 5, 10, 15 years time. It's amazing when you look back and you're like, wow, if I hadn't have done that thing, this wouldn't have happened.
Mm.
And yeah, like there's so many moments in my life where it's like if I didn't do that, it wouldn't have happened. So yeah, that would be the one key takeaway. But make sure you deal with the emotional side of it as soon as you possibly can.
So, taking responsibility, taking action.
Yeah,
It's your life. You get one chance. Well,
that's it.
thank you very much. It's been a really good chat, and thank you for sharing what has been a really just interesting life so far. I know you've been through a lot of things, and you're now doing things in a certain way based on that. But yeah, proud to have you as a business partner and a friend,
Thank
and
you, mate.
excited where this will go next. So for listeners, thank you very much for tuning in. Subscribe. You can get us on Spotify, YouTube, and the next episodes. We've got a long list of guests lined up for season 1. So we'll start to bring you some conversations of those in the medical device industry. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye.